Mike Cardano with Roto Experts in the Fantasy Sports Network, here to talk to you about some of the top tournament plays for Week 3 on DraftKings. And when you're done watching me here, if you're looking for some more of my analysis, hop on over to RotoExperts.com or tune into the Fantasy Sports Network 7 days a week, and there's no telling what fantasy goodies I'll be throwing your way. And of course, you're in for some daily fantasy treats right here, as I'll be with you each week helping DraftKings users find players with big upside and potential low ownership, helping you separate from the field and climb the DraftKings tournament leaderboard. Now let's get right to it and take a look at the quarterback position this week. And the first guy I'd like to highlight is Russell Wilson. He's averaging 18.2 points per game after the first 2 weeks. Now this week the Seahawks are home favorites with the fourth highest team total of the week. Now Wilson was fourth in the league last season in fantasy points per dropback, and a matchup against the Broncos typically results in more plays for opposing offenses because of the quick pace that Denver plays at. In the first 2 weeks, opposing offenses have run 69 plays per game. Through Seattle's first 2 games, they've only averaged 53 plays per game. Wilson's price comes at a severe discount here on DraftKings at just $6,800, and we're looking at some monstrous upside here due to his ability with his legs and the Seahawks' willingness to throw the ball deep. All he's ever needed to be an elite fantasy quarterback is volume, and on Sunday, we expect him to get volume. Now, early indications are that Carson Palmer will not be able to suit up for the Cardinals this week, which will give Drew Stanton another start. Now, Stanton is priced at the bare minimum $5,000 on DraftKings, and he's blessed with a plethora of big play options to target. Michael Floyd is a big play threat on the outside with Andre Ellington an option underneath, and Larry Fitzgerald still remains a red zone threat. Now, in Stanton's first start, he had an average depth target of 11.8 yards down the field. A risk taker is exactly what we want in tournaments, and Stanton is that kind of a quarterback. The 49ers defense allowed 4 touchdowns last week to the Bears' aerial attack, and if not for turnovers in Week 1 against the Cowboys, could have allowed another big number. Now, the other thing we like about Stanton is opportunity. The Cardinals are a pass-first team, both inside and outside the red zone. They've thrown the ball on 58% of their called plays this season, and done so 2/3 of the time inside the opponent's red zone. Lots of opportunities with deep targets gives us the big play upside we're looking for in the tournament with our quarterbacks. Moving on over to the running backs, all the focus in the Lions backfield this week is going to be on Joique Bell. Bell has received most of the goal line carries, and throughout the first 2 weeks of the season, he's outsnapped Bush 77-62, while also receiving more carries, 25-15, and targets 12-9. Now, Bell is emerging as the lead back there and the better option in cash games, but in tournaments, the close pricing between the two will make Bush under-owned. Now, Bush still has big playability, as evidenced by an 86-yard touchdown run this preseason, and his involvement in the passing game gives him an elevated ceiling. In 2 games last season against the Packers, Bush averaged 22.5 DraftKings points per game, including a monstrous Thanksgiving Day effort, 117 yards rushing, 65 yards receiving, and a touchdown. Now, Bush's role makes him a bit inconsistent, but he remains a high-ceiling player in a great offense. Trent Richardson is another back in a timeshare who's losing appeal to his primary competitor. Now, perception should also help keep Richardson under-owned, as will his price point, which is modestly above fellow back Ahmad Bradshaw at $4,800. Richardson has still earned the bulk of the red zone carries, and the Jaguars have allowed 18 red zone carries through the first 2 weeks of the season. Since Richardson is a plotter, he won't be perceived as having much upside, but upside comes in touchdowns, and Richardson could fall into 2 touchdowns against the Jaguars defense that has allowed 4 rushing touchdowns in the first 2 weeks of the season. Looking at the wide receivers, Deshaun Jackson gets to face his former team in Week 3, and his injury last week may have people off his scent. Jackson did not practice on Wednesday, but maintains that he'll play this weekend, and his pairing with Kirk Cousins could be just the thing he needs to put together a big game. Cousins' average depth of target last week was 12.2 yards down the field. To put that kind of aggressiveness into perspective, Michael Vick led the league in average depth of target last season at 11.3 yards down the field. look for Cousins to continue to take shots deep, and Jackson should be the primary beneficiary. As a big play threat, he only needs one to make his fantasy day. And with Cousins, he should get a few looks. Through the first 2 weeks of the season, it certainly looked like Torrey Smith is the second receiving option in Baltimore's offense. Steve Smith has generated 25 targets compared to Torrey Smith's 10. Now, this perception may actually help Torrey in a matchup with the Cleveland Browns, who deploy a top shadow corner in Joe Hayden. Now, if Hayden sticks to Steve Smith, Torrey will get matched up with Buster Skrine, who was the 98th ranked cover cornerback in the NFL last season, according to Pro Football Focus. Baltimore is averaging league-high 45.5 pass attempts per game. If Torrey emerges in the more favorable matchup this week, we could see a monstrous jump in his targets for a very talented player. Now on to the tight ends. Travis Kelce leads the Chiefs in yards per pass run at 3.82, but he's run just 34 routes in the first 2 games of the season. He's the Chiefs' most explosive receiver, and at some point the Chiefs are going to recognize this and increase his usage. In order to win a tournament, you need to be ahead of the curve, betting on a talent and hoping to catch that breakout game. The Dolphins linebackers struggle in coverage, and Kelce's athleticism, based on combine metrics, puts him in a category along with Rob Gronkowski. He's had 11 targets in 2 games and a red zone target in each, despite running just 1/3 of the routes of Anthony Fasano. Now, there's big upside if the balance shifts even slightly towards Kelce. One of the ways to win tournaments is to pay a price tag that others will balk at. So with Niles Paul just $100 less than Rob Gronkowski this week, I think many owners will be balking for a backup tight end who's starting just his second game. Paul's athleticism deserves more attention though. He was a wide receiver in college and he ran the 4.51 40-yard dash at the combine. Kirk Cousins showed an immediate connection with Paul last week, and many of the deep targets down the field were to Paul. Now for more Week 3 recommendations, head on over to RotoExperts.com and sign up for the weekly fantasy football package. Professional fantasy players Drew Dinkmeyer and Mike Leone will get you ready each week with in-depth statistical analysis, site-specific cheat sheets, and lineup alerts sent right to your inbox. That's the weekly fantasy football package at RotoExperts.com. Now, if you've got specific questions in your season-long league about Week 3, shoot me a note on Twitter at Mike Cardano, and I'll see how many I can get to. Enjoy the games, everyone. Good luck in your daily fantasy gaming. For Roto Experts in the Fantasy Sports Network, I'm Mike Cardano.